Well, the Mets offseason, it was a wild, tumultuous, and at times wacky offseason, but we're feeling pretty good about this team as we gather here in early February, just a couple days before the team reports to spring training. Well, the offseason started a lot earlier than most fans expected, but it began when David Stearns addressed the media when the regular season concluded and talked about run prevention, how that would be one of the goals of this offseason. As we'll get to, we'll see if they necessarily accomplished that goal. But there was a lot of work to do and a lot of turning over of the roster yet to come. So it was confirmed that Carlos Mendoza would be returning as manager, which was expected even though the team collapsed. However, the coaching staff wouldn't be returning. And then we found out that reportedly Antoine Richardson and Jeremy Hefner were both headed to the Atlanta Braves after they had success in their tenure with the New York Mets. So not a great way to start out the offseason, losing two respected coaches to a division rival like that. But anyhow, when the majority of the activity got together was in mid November, and that was when the Mets traded Brandon Nemo to the Texas Rangers in exchange for Marcus Semien. The Mets felt that Nemo was due for a change of scenery, and they also wanted to get out from under his contract. It was a 5 year contract. He's not really living up to it, he's slowing down, and they were concerned that he wouldn't be a great fit in the outfield for an extended period of time. So in exchange, they get someone in Marcus Semien, who could be the second baseman, pretty much the everyday second baseman. He has pop in his bat. He's had a 40 plus homer season. He hit as many as 30 bombs a couple years ago. The offense has ticked down in the last 2 years, but he provides gold glove defense at second base. So the Mets felt that was a very worthwhile swap and a way to kind of, again, address that run prevention issue that David Stearns had outlined. So then we went into the Thanksgiving break. It was quiet. And then on December 1st, the Mets signed Devin Williams to kind of anchor the back of their bullpen. At the time, Edwin Diaz was still a free agent. So the move to sign Devin Williams, a former Yankee, was seen as a way to protect against Diaz, leaving. And unfortunately for Met fans, that happened 1 week later when Edwin Diaz signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers on a 3 year deal worth a little over $60 million in total. The Mets came in under that, and they apparently weren't willing to budge from their initial offers. So very frustrating that he goes to the Dodgers. The Mets lose one of the best closers in baseball, and then the very next day we find out that they lose Pete Alonso, their home run hitter, one of their best offensive pieces, and a guy who posts. He plays every day, 160 games you could book him for almost every year. So at that point, Met fans are getting really frustrated. We're heading into the holiday season. They haven't really signed anybody. And then we find out that they dumped Jeff McNeil, basically a salary dump. They get back a pitcher who will see what he becomes. And then as the new year began, the Met fans continued to remain frustrated, not enough additions, until we then found out that they were in the rumors for Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker was a great player that would have been amazing in a Met uniform, even if he was only going to be here for 2 years. And that's what got the Mets interested, that he was involved in negotiations on a short-term high AAV deal. Unfortunately, the Dodgers also were able to offer him that kind of contract, so lo and behold, he took his talents to LA. And then the Mets aggressively pivoted and signed Bo Bichette. They actually stole him away from the Phillies, as the Phillies were seen to be one of his favorites to sign. And at that point, the Mets had at least brought in a piece who can anchor the third base. Bo Bichette will be a third baseman for the team. Doesn't have a lot of experience at third base, but it's still very important that they put that bat into the lineup. He's a career 294 hitter. He hit 311 last year. Can hit you 20 home runs and drive in a ton of runs. So Semien at second, Bo at third, Lindor, of course, at first. They made a move right before the new year had concluded to bring in Jorge Polanco on a 1 year deal. 2 year deal. So they're paying him $20 million a year to be the first baseman. There's questions about that. But then this is when things really started to get going. The Mets then acquired Luis Robert in a trade with the Chicago White Sox. At worst, he gives you gold glove defense in center field. We hope he gets back to the 38 home run season he had a couple years ago. We'll see. So you have Robert in center. And then the biggest move of the offseason was trading with the Milwaukee Brewers, David Stearns' former team, for Freddie Peralta. In exchange, the Mets gave up Brandon Spurt and Jed Williams. But Peralta should anchor the top of the rotation. It's a rotation that needed an ace. They desperately needed an ace. And Peralta should be able to give that to him. He should be the guy to take the opening day start. And that definitely boosted the rotation. So overall, it was, again, a lot of pieces in, a lot of pieces out. I think they came pretty close to absorbing all the losses and kind of making up for it. We'll see. But credit to them. They did a good job in making an attempt to get back to it as possible. I think there's two big takeaways from this. First takeaway is David Stearns is molding this team the way he sees fit. The owner isn't meddling, and this is David Stearns' team, so let's all find out what this team becomes. This is Stearns' vision. I'm glad he was able to do it independently, on his own volition, without any outside involvement. And that leads me into takeaway number 2, which is that most of the guys they've acquired are here on short-term contracts. They're here, they're being paid a lot of money for that 1 year that they're here, but it's a short-term contract, which means they can bounce in another year. That's important because it gives this team the ability to plug young players into the everyday lineup, maybe this season, but also in 2027, 2028. So that's what you want. You want the ability for young players to contribute, and they can do it a lot more efficiently. So overall, like I said, it has been a wild, tumultuous, wacky offseason, but here we are. We're excited. We think this team can be better than the 83-win team they were in 2025, and they can make not only a push for the playoffs, but also a push for a World Series.